First city council meeting for the city of Holiday Island. It's our regular meeting of June 20th, 2023. It's 6 p.m. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's roll call.
Okay. Councilmember Dumas.
Here.
Councilmember Elwood.
Here.
Councilmember Graves.
Here.
Councilmember Kuhn.
Here.
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Pittman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm here.
Okay, everyone is here.
I'll declare a quorum. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Then made a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Who seconded it? Pat seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Under ceremonials, recognitions, proclamations, and memorial. Approved minutes. I'm trying to speed things up here.
You are.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Jerry made a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of 5/16, special meeting of 6/8, and the workshop of 6/8, and Wynn seconded it. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Well, opposed. Minutes are approved. Now, under ceremonials, recognitions, and proclamations, I did attend, and a few of you did attend, Tom Deese's memorial service or celebration of life service at the barn on Saturday. It was very well attended. Quite a few people spoke. I was able to give the family the little plaque that we came up with, and I told them that once we get into our more permanent offices for the city, we're going to have an actual bronze plaque made commemorating his contribution to Holiday Island. So that all went quite well. All right, moving on to reports, financial statements. Wes?
Okay, I'll begin with the balance sheet. You can see at the end of May, we had $622,000 total funds in the bank, which included $254 general fund, total of $80,000 in the reserve fund. You can see we did transfer $70,000 of that balance to a time certificate of deposit at CS Bank, and there is about $283,000 in the street fund. Okay, and as far as general fund, the total receipts for the month were $24,000. Bringing us to a total of $115,000 for the year to date. Most of that now, $180,736 is for our share of the county sales tax, which is about 38% of our budget. Normally through May, we're through about 42% of the year, so we're a little under, a little short on budget there, but that may be caught up during the summer too. And then our municipal aid is 35% of the budget, but we'll probably be receiving an advance payment of $2,000 in July, which they always do, which will bring us up to budget on that. And as you go down through expenses, I don't think there was really anything unusual for the month. Our administrative expenses, if you go down a little, for, 2,200, or 4790 for the month, bringing us to 33,000 for the year to date. Most of those are within budget. Of course, we always have in January, we have the municipal league dues, which are the largest expenditure. Let's see.
The dues.
Website, that's right. We had made an annual payment on the website, so we're 98% of the budget on that. And our dues and fees are 95% of the budget because we paid the municipal league for the year. You go down through expenses at a total, let's see. Okay, municipal league, or building and construction, there was $100 for a permit that we received, and the expenses were $1,200 for the month, bringing us to a grand total of $8,000 for the year on that. Code enforcement, our total expenses were $576, giving us a total of $3,269 year to date. And district court, no income, and the only expense was some supplies that were purchased to get set up to handle a court. Planning commission at $128 in expense, so $1,000 for the year to date there. And public safety, we had these would be expenses for the sheriff's office, the utilities and the rent were $351. We had no revenue there. And on solid waste, we sold $135 of bag tags, and they had $145 in dumpster fees. So we're $9.85 in the hole for the month there. So year to date, let's see.
Street fund here.
Okay, that's, yeah. Now we go to the street fund. We had, our income was $30,394 for the month. And you can see our income and expenses there. The 4-lane highway funds, which is the 0.5% sales tax, we're over budget on that really, because we have 45% of the budget received. The county property tax, we're at $33,000, and we're at 39% of the budget there. And taxes are really just starting to come in there. And then on fuel tax, $42,000 for the year, we're 39% there, so we're close there. So, like I say, $30,000 in income for the month and no expense.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Dan, what are we gonna do about the signage? Is it a signage we got some kind of line we're gonna, or plan that we're gonna do to replace the signage on the state line, or what?
The district has been starting to replace some of the more worn street signs, so they haven't really asked for any money yet. So I need to sit down with Danny and just put together a plan for how we're gonna spend our street fund money. I haven't had time to do that yet.
Well,
I sent you guys all a proposal about a month ago that I would like to pursue with, the district, but it's gonna require their buy-in, and I haven't had time to talk to them about it yet.
Okay,
All right.
any other questions?
Right,
Make a motion, we accept the financial statements.
Ken made a motion to accept the financial statements, do I have a second?
Second.
Lynn seconded it, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the financials are accepted, they can get posted. Sandy, we have you down as the first item under new business, so there's a couple of committee report things here first, and then we'll let you go so that you don't have to sit here all night listening to us.
It's exciting stuff.
All right, standing committees. I did distribute the fire department and deputy reports, so they can just go ahead and get posted online. I don't think there's much to discuss about it, pretty routine stuff, nothing special, especially on the deputy side, with one exception. We have not been billed yet this year by the county for any deputy hours, and Jeff Bilbo, Deputy Bilbo, checked into that about 2 weeks ago, and they still had him on the books over in Berryville as being assigned to the county, not assigned to Holiday Island. Even though he was here most of the time and only called out theoretically on emergencies, but he thought that he was getting called out a little too often for more, even some routine things. So he sat down and talked to him about it over there and confirmed it with the sheriff, that they need to change his assignment in the system over there to Holiday Island. And he said since they've done that, he's only gotten called out, at the time we talked, I think he said twice, and it was both for car accidents where there was the fire department and everybody responded to it. So, I would expect that now that he's assigned on the books to Holiday Island, that we'll probably see a bill for May.
For me,
Yeah, and they may double up on May and June, once
Okay.
we finally get the bill.
I've seen him posted up on 23 on Holiday Island Drive, so he's a presence.
Dan, can I just mention, I don't think we've mentioned it in a meeting since I put it out there, but we do have a web page now where anyone can find the deputy and fire department reports.
Okay,
And
Yeah.
we changed the title of one of the menu items across the top of the page, and it's called City Departments, I think. And you'll find the building inspector, the code enforcement, and the fire and police out there.
okay. Planning commission, I figured we'd just defer until we get to unless you have something to remember. Broadband, we're gonna again defer until Sandy gets up and talks to us. Status on code enforcement. Aaron couldn't be here tonight, he had to be in Little Rock, so I told him I would cover some highlights and lowlights and just kind of where we stand. So this is probably Aaron's single biggest accomplishment of his life. This is #1 Dogwood. We were fighting with that property, going all the way back to when I was on the board of commissioners, and Lawrence Blood was still here yet.
Well, that looks nice.
And
It looks lived in.
that was part of the front yard, that was part of the front yard. You don't have pictures of the backyard, but it looked worse. And he doesn't have pictures, well, he didn't send me pictures of the inside of the house, but it looked just like the outside.
How did he get access to the inside?
It started out by him working with the owner of the absentee landlord, to get the residents there evicted.
Oh,
And then she kind of sort of gave him authority to continue to help her.
okay.
So, they went, she and David Dobrin, or Aaron, I think, and David Dobrin, I think, both went in the house to see if it needed to be condemned or if it was salvageable. And they decided that the bones of the house were still good, even though the flooring is gonna have to be stripped out, the drywall. A lot of the copper and copper wiring and pipes won't have to be stripped out because they already did that. And anyway, the people are gone finally, and she found a buyer for the house, and the buyer came in, and that's what that yard looks like now.
Wow.
After 5 years of it being a Superfund site. The windows and doors are still boarded up, but that little sign and the planter thing there says another project by Chris Miller Construction. So Chris Miller Construction is about to start rehabbing that house. And
Well, there are some nice houses nearby.
well, because we're finally dealing with this house, the people that own the duplex next to it, they're fixing their place up to be a VRBO.
Well,
So, but anyway, they've painted, there's a fresh coat of paint on the place next door. Everybody in the neighborhood is happy, so, big accomplishment. It took Aaron basically a full year once he got started on this, because it's a long process to get somebody evicted and get the property sold and everything, and he really went over and above the call of duty and getting that done. This was on the corner of Table Rock Drive and Elm Lane. Just popped up kind of overnight. A guy from Utah, and this was really more of a misunderstanding than anything. A guy from Utah bought that property and he read our building code, and the building code said that you didn't need a building permit for a storage unit less than 100 square feet. So he is building a little storage shed there that's 2 sheets of plywood big, so it's less than 100 square feet. Well, he just totally disregarded the zoning ordinances that says that you have to have a house first and then you can have a storage shed. So we posted a notice, because he wasn't there, we posted a notice on the tree, and Aaron somehow got his telephone number the next day, called him, and within 2 days it was gone. So
What's that green canopy there?
the blue,
That was in shelter.
yeah, he was actually living in a tent there while he was building his little shed. But like I said, he's from Utah. He bought the lot. He was gonna build that little shed so that he could keep tools and stuff in it while he came down here and probably, I guess, started building his house for himself or something. But anyway, we got it straightened out, and building that shed there and putting tools in it and then going back to Utah probably wasn't a good idea anyway. Because
You come back to an
those
empty shell.
tools probably wouldn't have lasted very long.
So did he deconstruct it? Or did you let him keep
He took it down
it
and
down?
took all the lumber. This is a little hard to see, but it's some kind of a camper shell for the back of a pickup truck or something.
Okay.
That's sitting on 6x6s, and there's a a gas grill next to it. So somebody is living in that camper shell and cooking with that gas grill.
Is it a one-stone sidewalk?
We haven't gotten up there to deal with that one yet, but we have pictures of it. This is Mercury Lane. If you've ever been down to the
Yeah.
end of Mercury Lane, it looks like somebody dropped a bomb in there.
It's a little scary.
And, this one is on Tempest. This must be relatively new, because Tempest used to be a pretty nice little, there was only 2 or 3 houses on Tempest. And I've been down there a couple of times just seeing what condition the road was in. And the road is in really good shape and everything, so I don't, like I said, this just happened in the
Is that
last couple
just
of
trash
years.
all over the deck?
Yeah, it's trash. I would imagine that they put trash in something and then the animals got in it.
Right. Really like Dr. Pepper, huh?
Hey.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah, this is where Jerry goes to drink Dr. Pepper. On Tempest Lane.
Jerry, you've been found out. Cease and desist.
He's the only person we know that drinks Dr. Pepper. So. Actually, I think Elsa like drinks Dr. Pepper too. This is the inside. Deputy Bilbo actually took these pictures on Tempest Lane, so I don't know if he opened the house, the door and took pictures, or if the place was standing open and he took pictures. Haven't had a chance to talk to him about it. So that's probably the end of the slide.
Yeah, it is, end of the show.
So the last 4 were work that remains to be done.
Oh, and there's a long list. This is a 10% sample of what the problems are in Holiday Island. Some of the worst ones, some of the more difficult ones, I think I mentioned before. Not only are they code violators, but they're law violators and have arrest warrants and everything else, so. So when we approach those properties, we will probably, Jeff will probably assist Aaron.
There's one right up next door to the clubhouse.
Yeah,
Bad or worse. than
that's
that.
a bad, that one needs to have the grass cut, but it's,
Oh, that, the drunk cars out
Yeah,
there.
five cars.
yeah, but that's still pretty far down the
Yeah,
priority list.
nah, that needs to be burned today.
Yeah, I'll let you go and talk to the guy.
Okay.
We'll work on it once we have pictures of.
Um,
I'm not saying it's not important, it's just
Well,
not
it's-
the worst of our problems.
no, it's very, very, very visible.
It's very visible. It's in a bad place.
So what are we doing about the non-participants in the trash collection?
Well, we got the list down to 23 names. I've actually been even going through the list, and some of those were actually duplications where it was just spelled different. Like one was, Tempest Lane in all capitals, and the other one was Tempest, small letters with LA or something, or LN. So,
I think we got a lot more than that. There's too many people still illegal dumping. I don't know.
well, we're working on it. We're going through the list and we're working on it.
Are we gonna talk about that now?
I can mention that, but I think everybody knows what my plan is.
Well,
We have a problem with the dumpster down here, with it being
Well,
abused.
we need to do something to Carroll County Solid Waste, because they're not standing up to their contract. They put that dumpster down here for the, cardboard, and it wasn't working. I called him 3 months ago, and he said he was gonna build a second one, and he said in the interim, I'll pick it up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and half the time they don't pick it up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that's what you got down here now, and it looks like crap.
There's nothing in our contract with Carroll County Solid Waste that says.
Well,
that
then
they
just
have
tell
to-
them to get rid of it.
Yeah,
If they're not gonna make a good program, then they need to get it out of here.
Well, the problem is we don't have an alternative solution for the people who are handling the.
We had the same thing we did before. Everybody took their cardboard to Eureka Springs.
not everybody. Some of them took them to the nearest dead-end road through in the ditch.
Well,
And we don't have that problem right now, so.
well, yeah, you
We
just got
got
a problem with that mess down there every week.
Carroll County Solid Waste has got their issues too.
I know, I
they have
talked to
equipment
George.
problems.
Two more times.
I mean, you can be mad, but there's only so much people can do.
Well, when you're gonna start something, you ought to finish it.
I will advise him to raise the rates in Holiday Island so that they can buy another truck to handle the cardboard.
And
Because that's what they're gonna have to do.
I'll get an insurrection.
We'll get some people here then.
Yeah, you will.
We can't snap our fingers and make these problems go away.
Well, it's been 3 months.
What do you consider an appropriate reaction time?
Well, he should have done what he told me he was gonna do.
Yeah, he probably would have if his trucks wouldn't have broke down.
Well, that's not gonna keep people from putting fish guts down in the dumpsters and, I mean, that's a more pressing problem to me than cardboard.
Misusing the dumpster besides not.
Well, I think as soon as we can, we really need to lock that up and get it secured.
I got
I know.
this made,
I fully support that.
I gotta get confirmation from Carroll County Solid Waste that they can in fact enforce the Department of Environmental Quality portion of this before I, have a sign made. Once I get that confirmation, I will have the sign made, we'll get a camera, we'll have to set a post to mount it, we'll have to get solar battery system to power it, and we'll see if that helps.
I think a really prominent sign will help myself.
Get somebody
Put the
around
other
it.
sign off to the side when we sees there is.
Because if that doesn't work, then we're gonna have to come up with a different plan for the weekend property owners and just get rid of the dumpster. Okay, moving on to, we have no old business, moving on to new business. Sandy, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy and Jerry to talk about broadband.
Sandy, you're up.
Okay.
We've got a mic over there if you want to use that.
Usually I don't need a mic with this
Well, there
voice.
you go.
Well, it's so that the
It's on
recorder
Zoom.
captures it.
Gotcha, gotcha.
You just
Um,
push the button on there.
Sorry?
Push the button. There
Gotcha.
you go. Thank
Now
you
you're
so
live.
much.
Better?
Yep.
Okay, thanks for inviting me. We've been working on this for, gosh, Jerry, what, 3 years now? Something like that? Started in 2021 when the state started talking about making broadband available all throughout the state, which of course excited us. And we had been working with Rodney Balance. I think you all have met Rodney, with his delivery system. And we were all very hopeful about it. And then the state hired a consultant at a very expensive amount of money who came to Carroll County, came to a C3 meeting first to kind of introduce himself and tell us what he was charged to do. And that was to go all throughout the county, figure out the gaps, make a recommendation to the state, and add a dollar amount to that to be able to deploy the money, basically. He told us in that meeting that we were basically 10 years away in Carroll County, and we questioned that, and we argued with it, and we weren't happy with it. And so we kind of confabbed with Rodney and developed a plan that we were gonna go out and try to get as many people as possible to submit as many documents as possible, speed tests, letters, whatever it could be, to flood the state broadband office. We did that. You guys were extremely helpful in that. We had letters from all of the school districts, from all of the EMS, fire department, all the hospitals and clinics. We had, I can't remember how many speed tests that were lousy. Example, the city hall in Eureka Springs is on Cox, supposed to be fiber, and they had like 3 up and 5 down. It was just terrible. And it goes out every other week. And you can't run a city, as you know, without technology. It's terrible. So everything was put on hold as far as the state expenditures were concerned until the consultant gave the report. The report said exactly what he told us. We also held a community meeting at the auditorium for the county, and we had a pretty good turnout for that. He repeated his negativity on it, and that basically it was going to take forever and blah, blah, blah. And his report came out, basically said almost exactly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, what he told us in the very first meeting when we met him. All he did was confirm his theory. I also need to tell you that he is also a broadband company. So there's a little bit of perhaps conflict of interest and stuff in that, but
His fee was $2 million.
yeah.
$2 million.
And he was the highest bid and the least qualified. So there were connections there. Anyway, fast forward, the report was done. One of the key recommendations that he made in his report was to slow things down a bit, also make all the applicants responsible for 50% of the cost up front. That then gave all the power to the big boys and not to anybody that was competitive or that would care about Carroll County, like Rodney. That was pretty upsetting. The office got some pushback. The director of the Arkansas State Broadband resigned, and there is a new director. His name is Glenn Howey. He's wonderful. He came in earlier this year, and the mayor and Jerry were at that meeting. And basically what he said without saying it is, I don't believe the consultant's report. So he is starting over, asked us to put together a county committee, which we have done, to basically tell them what we need and refute the numbers that they have. He gave us a kind of a fact sheet that said that Carroll County, according to what their office, previous office, had researched, is only shy of fiber optic by 3,000 households. Exactly. We know that's not true. But we're in the position where we need to refute that and prove it. And that's what the committees are set up to do. Meanwhile, the feds, which is the timeline we're against, is providing over $1.8 billion to the state of Arkansas to expand broadband, fiber optics. It's a lot of money. And Glenn wants to make sure that it's spent right, prioritized right, and put in the right places with the right people. There are already grants under the old grant system that are in the works, like Windstream, for example, got a grant in 2021 to cover Carroll County. They haven't even begun to build that out. They have 10 years to spend that money. So again, there's a whole bunch of imbalance and misappropriation, really, of time and certainly resources. So what the committee has been working on is how do we get the information they need? How do we get the testimony from the critical areas that they're interested in, that we're also interested in, which is education, health and safety, emergency services, to be able to qualify for that money and bump us up higher in the priority list, as opposed to 5 or 10 years or even 2 years. They have been very, very pleased with what we have done so far. Apparently, we're like the model committee. They are putting together a networking opportunity so that all 75 county committees, some are active, some are not so active. We meet monthly, others meet quarterly or sporadically. But what we have done is we've created a website that is a focal point for information as well as the survey. We've developed a survey, a postcard survey, and let me distribute these.
I think we can probably pull it up on the screen.
This might be a little easier. And the survey, we had a lot of discussion about, we're gonna resurrect all the letters that we had before. We are also meeting, each one of our meetings, we focus on a different priority, like we had education and got their needs and their recommendations. We had, in our last meeting, we had healthcare. Mercy was there. They did a great thing. They actually went out and had one of their field clinicians do a mapping of the rural areas in Carroll County, a lot in Holiday Island, that she covers, that she loses cell phone coverage. She can't even communicate. That's horrible. We asked the Mercy rep if he would put population figures to those, and he's gonna do that and bring that back to the next meeting. This next one is gonna be agriculture as well, because farmers are going more and more relying on technology, so we have to do that. I can't remember what else we've got going, but we've got one more going.
Industry, was Tyson?
I'm sorry?
How about industry? Was Tyson there, anybody?
Yeah, Tyson's gonna be invited to the agriculture,
Okay.
as well as the education because of Connect Four. So they'll be a part of that too. But, and of course, we've got anecdotal information and letters from our previous efforts from realtors that are kind of devastating when they go out and show people property or a home, regardless of where it is in Carroll County. First thing that comes out is their phone. And the minute they don't get a signal or get one bar, they go, nope. And, that's lost revenue. Critically, it's lost development for Carroll County. And we need that. Speaking as commissioner of the airport, it's critical to us out there. And we've had to install boosters because we're a life flight center out there as well. So, there's just so many reasons for Carroll County to be served. We devised this survey to go out and hit as many people as possible. It's completely anonymous. It is asking basic questions about, your cost. Are you happy? How many are in your household? Speed, if you have it. The survey is available online as well as through this, method of manually handing it out. The library system is involved in the committee, and they've agreed to be kind of the information and the contact point, which is wonderful. So anybody could go into any one of the libraries throughout Carroll County, get the information. We've translated it into Spanish. They have translators available at all of the libraries. Their numbers are on the card in case somebody has a question to be able to call them. They are also applying for a grant, and they will be the educational component of it when we get it, because we know we need computer literacy. We also need to teach people how to log on to the internet, those kinds of things. We're going to work through the churches. We think that's the best way to also get this information out. Primarily, we need to get this information out to the people that can't go online and fill it out. They're not the big problem. The problem and the number that we're trying to refute are exactly the people that we can't reach in any easy way. And so, we need all the thinking and the help that we can get to try to get these distributed. And again, completely anonymous. We will create a database hopefully come up with some very, very stark data to
Sandy,
present to
how
them.
do you determine, how many of them came from Holiday Island, how many came from Eureka?
Depending on where they distribute it, I mean, if you want to do yours out here and have them drop it off at the city offices or the chamber or whatever you want to do, we can do them in batches that way. It's going to be difficult to do that, actually, Jerry, because if people drop them off at the library, we have no idea where they're from. But, you know, originally, we had thought about doing a mail insert of this, and the committee decided that they really wouldn't use it, and stuff them in all the water bills, that, you know, you could get them back that way. But the committee felt like the postcards were a better way to go, that it wouldn't be uniform and we couldn't get them out totally. So that's what we're doing. And our deadline on this is to try to get these in by the middle of July. I believe, I'll find out more next week, but I believe our deadline for the report and recommendations to the state is due in August. And any ideas that you have, any thoughts, any recommendations, anything at all, please give them to Jerry or to the mayor.
A couple of our council persons had some questions that I couldn't answer.
Item 2, it says delivered, or, you know, I have Cox, and as far as I know, what it comes over is coax cable. It's the cable up on the telephone line.
Right.
And when I was working in the industry, I called that coax cable. It's not broadband,
Correct.
but it's not on the question here.
Well, optic cable, yeah.
There's none of those apply to what I have.
You're right.
Ours comes on a cable line.
Yeah, it would be
Cable TV
the
channel,
fiber
cable
optic
TVs.
cable. They
No, it's not
call it
fiber, it's
fiber
not
optic?
fiber
I don't know
It's
what
copper.
It's not fiber optic.
Coaxial cable.
Yeah, it's technically what it is. Cox calls it fiber.
It's not.
It's not.
I know. I know.
I would think the telephone line would be the,
Telephone line.
Well, DSL is different than
that was the other question, what DSL, that's what, the radio.
DSL just comes over at 2 pairs.
DSL is dedicated something line.
Service line.
Dedicated service line. So you pay the phone company to make a solder connection at your house and in the alley, downtown, wherever it's headed. So it goes from point A to point B. That's what DSL is. Nobody else is on it. It's not a party line. It's a direct connection to the service.
And it's fiber, and it's just regular copper line.
Right. It's telephone wire.
Also, Sandy, the other problem that I saw when Gary presented this last week was that I don't think an average person here or anywhere in rural Carroll County will understand the technology words. They aren't gonna know what they have. They aren't gonna be able to answer this accurately.
There are many that's true, and that's why we, you know, have the libraries as a point of information and contact, and we're hoping people will contact them.
How can they tell what they've got at their house though?
Well, you could ascertain what the service is. They know what their service is. You can back figure it that way.
But your bill tells you whether, you know, what your MIPS.
I don't know.
I think for our purposes, as long as they don't, check fiber optic.
Mhm.
I mean, that's.
I got nothing, mine's not on here, so. And I do not have fiber. I think it's all different.
We will change that on the online survey. Unfortunately, we just printed 10,000 of the postcards. So maybe that's a write-in if it's.
Write in
I would
coax?
say just.
Hmm?
Just write in coax?
Yeah. Please.
I think one of my concerns kind of from the start on this has been that, and this isn't to be critical of the state people that are working on this now, because I think that their heart is in the right place and they're working on the right things, with one exception. They say that their goal is to provide fiber optic internet service to all of the underserved people in Arkansas. That's their goal. But that's not their measure. Their performance measure is, what's your upload and download speed? They don't care how you get it. What's your upload and download speed? You know, if you have, what's the standard they're going by now?
100.
300 and 100?
Yeah.
All I know is,
So if you have 300, download and 100 upload speed available to you, kind of at any price, then you are not underserved by their definition.
Well, and the difference between the state money, because the previous grants had a lesser upload and download, and it wasn't fiber specific. The $1 billion package from the Fed is fiber specific with the 100 up.
and so Holiday Island does not have any fiber.
Correct. Well, we did
I mean, you
some
can make a-
research. There's hardly any fiber in Carroll County.
Right. So
Now, and it's actual accessible. What the state goes by, and if you go to, you know, like the FCC's map, which is what they based it on, it basically says coverage is there, but it's that they've got the delivery system there, but it's not connected. I live off of 23 South, and Cox has had cable there. I moved here in 2007, asked them to pull it back. Same thing that you guys have reported. It was like $10,000, $12,000 to pull it back. I'm not gonna do that. It was a ridiculous monthly price. It says I've got 100% coverage at my house from Cox. I don't. No, so there's laying the infrastructure, there's connectivity, and then there's affordability. And all those things have to be, because we haven't even gotten to affordability, but we're hoping that this will show that Carroll County is paying well over $100 a month. And the goal is to try to get it 75 or less for fiber optic.
So I guess affordability is the real reason all of Carroll County mostly is underserved.
That's right. That's right. And accessibility.
Yeah.
And there is zero incentive for Cox to participate in this, because if you're an ISP, an internet service provider, and you take any of this grant money, you have to be willing to sell the service for a price for $75 a month.
Right.
To people, if they can't afford more, you have to be willing to take $75 and provide them service. So Cox would have to discount their service to a whole bunch of people if they take the grant money. So there's no incentive whatsoever for them to help us with this problem.
But there is incentive for people like Rodney.
Yeah.
You know,
The
who,
only lever we would have is if we had an alternative like Rodney Valance, and we go to Cox and say, you either participate or get out of town.
But they're making it impossible for him to get in the game because of the way they screwed the way you have to do it.
well, on the funding thing, when that first came up, Rodney did go to a bank and he has that covered. So he's not concerned if they do, that we don't know if they're gonna keep the 50% up front by the ISP provider or not. If they do, he feels confident that he can get that. He just was awarded a contract, it's not the whole county, but a Boone County contract with it. So then he got the first Berryville contract. So he's a known entity. And they know that he's good and his costs are 75 or less a month. So, he's our secret weapon, we hope. We're trying to do everything we can to make sure the state not only hears how important it is for the state, and just for a minute, I'll point out Eureka Springs. If we can't continue to grow as a tourism, I mean, we're continually in the top 3 or 4 state tourism tax contributors to the state. They can't ignore us. They also know that because we're a tourist town and because we have the majority of our population is older, that we have to have good, strong healthcare system, an emergency system because of our geography and our topography. They get that, but we have to put that in a nice little package presentation. And I mean, we've done topo maps, we've done things like that to say, you know, because the first director said, when I said, we're questioning your coverage statistics, we know that's not true. We have documentation that we know it's not true, even in the areas that say they have fiber. And he, you know, I said, how do we refute that? And he said, well, you'll have to map your county. And I said, that's impossible. Plus, who's got $80 million to hire somebody to go and all, you know, the valleys, and you can't do it, can't do it. So this is a little bit more reasonable approach to it. And, you know, again, we don't, you know, if we get, we don't want to set our sights too high on how many we get back. But if we get, you know, 1,000 of them back, I'd be thrilled, because that's a pretty good statistic out of 27,000 population, not households. So we're talking about households in this case. So, you know, even 500 would statistically be a fairly close to valid stat on it.
Well, we're gonna have to get busy here in Holiday Island, and I think we've decided that the best approach is to work through the churches and the clubs and organizations, and maybe we can set up some workshops and.
So that's what I was thinking, if we could, the lady from the library director is working with the committee, maybe they could send some people over, we could set up some computers in the,
Yeah.
in the.
Well, what I'm hoping is that we have enough computer savvy people
We should
here
just
in
get
the
them to fill out
community
the
that.
postcard, for heaven's sakes, forget the computer.
Do
Just
what?
fill out postcards.
Let's just all of us take a stack and fill them out.
Yeah, I'm real concerned about sending out the postcards, because I think there's too many
I don't want to
people.
send them out, I just have a stack of them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
people come and fill them out.
Definitely,
Forget the
yeah.
computer.
The one thing I would say is have the people put their name and address on the back of the cards. So you know where it came from.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think
guessing
people
it has to
really
be
care
like
about
this.
anonymity.
It has to be.
What,
At least put the.
Well, that's the way we can isolate Holiday Island,
yeah,
Just have
if you want to do that.
Just put Holiday Island.
Yeah,
in.
you just put
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, when we put the word out, you know, we could, you know, say things like, bring your Cox bill, you know, if you have
Yeah,
Cox,
yeah,
bring your Cox bill, there's a
whoever
lot,
bills you for internet.
there's a
bring it.
lot we can learn from that,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And, you know, maybe some people will just have to follow them home and turn their computer on and see what they have. But I think a lot of people will, you know, obviously the people that don't even use a computer or have a computer, you know, that'd be pretty easy to fill out their card.
Speaking of which, do they count the fact that you're using internet, on your phone?
Yes.
Through the data?
Yeah, it says on there.
Yeah,
It's on here.
and that's what we've got on the card, because that's probably where the bulk of people who can't afford or are renting, you know, apartments or houses, that's probably their source for the internet. We know it is with youth, you know, that they very rarely go on a, you know, a desktop anymore. But we've got the phone on that for that reason. Yeah.
And then the upload, download, not applicable if you're using your phone is.
I'm sorry, I'm
I
a
say-
little hard of hearing.
I say, if you're using your phone, your cell phone as your data connection, then your upload speeds, and that's not applicable.
Doesn't mean anything, but what that, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's okay. That's okay.
What that does do is it kind of pulls out a segment of the population that is using Wi-Fi. And what we don't know, because that's a significant number for us to talk to state about, what we don't know is if they had accessible, affordable fiber, would they use it more often? And what are they paying for their phone bill? Sometimes that's as much as, I mean, I pay $175 to get my satellite on VSAT. It's the only thing that works at my house. And I've tried the Wi-Fi through the Verizon and nothing.
You talked about, the state having done this study that said, we were 3,000 people short.
Households.
Households short of, having everyone covered by fiber.
Correct.
Do they have a fiber map that shows that?
They have relied on the FCC map. That's the map that they take you to.
And how do we know, I mean, we know it's not reliable, so why is anyone putting any faith in that?
Well, Rodney's helped me find several other maps that are a little bit truer to accessibility with it. The FCC map is on just if it's available. If a fiber optic line is laid.
Like run under 23 South
Yeah,
somewhere?
but there's no connectivity. Nobody's, and we know that Windstream's got some lines like that.
And they just laid one down 62, I think.
And it's not
62,
connected to
right?
anybody.
And they laid one
And
in
the one down
Woodsdale.
Yeah, AT&T has got dead cable
Yeah, but it's
or
dead
fiber
cable,
optic
right.
cable.
What the FCC map is availability, not connectivity.
So how far away from that line do they consider it's available to you? I mean, do you have to be within 100 feet or 2 miles?
They can draw it back, as far as, and there's, Rodney, I wish Rodney can answer technical questions, but you were in the industry at one point? Called the middle mile?
He's never worked.
He's never worked? Okay.
He worked for the government, that doesn't count.
Oh, okay.
Kept
But
the records out of your back.
There's a middle mile that you can fill in with it. What they're looking for is a plan that's basically a spider effect, that they can lay it down, and Rodney has a really good plan about that. Where to lie it down, and how many people can shoot off of that, how many you can hit with that. That's what needs to happen. It's obviously, again, with our topography here, a huge challenge.
Oh, God, yeah.
But there are ways to get it done. That the way Rodney's dealt with Carroll County and some of the other areas is fill in until there's money to be able to actually connect people to fiber, is to fill in with Wi-Fi and boosters that you can boost that into valleys or somewhere up that's really shaded by trees. But, the good news was that the current director of the office, Glenn Howey, obviously also doesn't believe in the research and the band. And this was the first time he was up here. So he had to drive up 62, because he came in from Bentonville, and he looked around at our, geography. They drove around after our meeting, and he said, I get your issue, I get your problem. But I gotta have some substantial data to work with. So that's what we're trying to do.
Linda, those maps, if Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the data that went into making those maps was all provided by the ISPs.
Yeah,
And nobody challenged them on
right,
it.
yeah.
And that's the root reason for this card, for needing to, you know, if Cox told them that, you know, 100% of Holiday Island is covered with cable or with fiber, you know, nobody would have nobody challenging them on it.
Well, there was one map that was in that package that had showed where we had like 100% fiber.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
And these are
because
the,
it's there and available to serve the county. That doesn't mean anything.
Well, I know I use coax cable, and I use DSL, and I use fiber optic, and I laid a lot of fiber optic, and there's a whole lot of difference. And if you're
Yes.
talking about broadband, you're talking about fiber optic, so I don't know why, you know, if the plan is to lay fiber optic, why we're considering substitutes.
Well,
So if you get a sample from each of the major communities or each of the major areas around the county, you would just say you're gonna use it to extrapolate and assume that that represents the state of the county, right?
yes. Well, we're gonna use the same language they did. If they're talking about county in terms of households, then we'll talk the same language that they're talking with. But we'll fill it in with specific examples, like, you know, underscoring Holiday Island in particular. Underscoring like the clinician's report on the map that when she's trying to provide healthcare, she can't even call an ambulance or connect with her office or connect with the individual she's to see, which means they can't call and get help.
For the school system, having to send school buses out with hotspots. in
Yep.
Different neighborhoods.
And they've had to go to Wi-Fi, their Wi-Fi, the state provides that. That's all through, what did you say, UAMS? I think that provides the state school districts in. But, you know, they have issues, they provide iPads for all the students. And he gave us a figure, we need the other two school districts, and I can't remember the figure, but he gave us a percentage of the kids that don't have access to any type of internet at home. And it was 20%, 26%. It was a pretty significant number.
Well, we also have a lot of dead zones for cell phone service, don't we? All
We
over
do.
the county. We do in Holiday Island, I know.
We do, and it depends on the provider,
Yeah,
yeah.
So wireless doesn't work then either.
yeah, exactly.
So, you know, it impacts everything.
I mean, I'm really confused about what we're trying to do, because the initiative says broadband. Broadband is one thing.
You look up the definition of broadband, they don't tie that to fiber optics. It says the medium can be coaxial cable, optical fiber, wireless internet radio, twisted pair, or satellite.
I
It's
think the
your-
key thing to focus on
It's the
is,
speed and the amount of data that it can handle at one time.
I think the key thing to focus on is the federal dollars specify fiber
Right.
and specify a speed and specify an affordability threshold. So,
That's the future vision.
Well, that's where the money's coming from, though.
right, so that's what the state is shifting and going to. On the previous one, they didn't, you know, they didn't have those qualifications, those same qualifications. They had nothing about affordability. So Windstream and Cox and the other big boys that got the money, Ritter, before, all of those folks aren't delivering what this new pool of money is requiring.
Well, they got money to lay that fiber out there they're not using, right?
Right, well, Windstream, and I just looked it up today, Windstream got the grant for Carroll County to lay fiber in 2021, September 2021. They have 10 years to spend the money. They got, I can't remember, $6.4 million or something. They're covering 15,000 households with that. But that's out of 5 other counties as well. So and Garland County was one, they were the ones that was featured. Carroll County was just in the list of the other ones. So again, we're down on the bottom of the list, you know that. We're gonna be the last ones, so. And they're in Berryville, they got an office in Berryville. Did I cover it, Jerry and Mayor?
Good job, Sandy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's the committee's work, it's good, I just get to talk about it. So, any suggestions, help, or whatever that you have, please funnel them through the mayor or Jerry and bring them to the committee and implement them.
but you want our input by July 15th?
Yeah. And we've got some slack time in that too, but I'll confirm when in August our report's due to them. But I'll need a little bit of time to tabulate everything and create a spreadsheet.
Okay, we'll get to work.
Thank you.
I have one question, actually two or three. Wasn't AT&T out here a couple of years ago putting in fiber optics?
They laid cable down
Yeah.
Woodsdale here, but Rodney Ballin said that these big providers, internet providers, you know, they have cash to spend, you know, they have capital investment money that they have to spend. And so they spend it, he calls it dark cable, that they'll run cable
Cable to nowhere.
into an area, but they won't hook anybody up to it.
Right.
They spent their capital investment money, they're probably getting their tax breaks for doing the capital investment.
Yeah.
But they have not opted to hook anybody up to it yet.
My second question is, I was watching Lynn the map here, when they say that, when Cox says that they have 100% coverage out here, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody out here is connected to Cox. It just means that they could fit them to Cox.
Correct.
And it's available.
It's available for $3,000 to $10,000 per pole that you need to have installed.
Because if you look at, on the map and you find my house, you look straight up above where Bob Hollingsworth lives, he didn't have cable there.
Right.
He was on whatever that is.
On the backside of Appaloosa, they don't have cable.
Right. So, okay. And then third point I could make is, this is my personal problem, but when I have Cox cable, no matter what I pay for, I don't get what they tell me I'm gonna get. So I have dumbed it down, quite frankly, this is my own personal problem. I've dumbed it down to the lowest level, because that's all I get at my house. So, you know, so I'm not at 100 meg, or MPS, whatever that is. I'm at something like 80 or 70 or something like that, so, anyway.
And they'll slow you down too if you use it too much. They have a history of doing that.
Yeah, it's slow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's like 8 o'clock in the morning at my house, I don't need to try to do anything on the computer, because it's just slow.
Right. It may not even be the people on my block, it could be someplace else on the neighborhood. Yeah. Anyway.
When everybody's up checking their emails and doing their Facebook,
Right.
it's bogged down.
Right. But I think there's a lot of streaming, all the Netflix and stuff like that.
Well, that's getting to be a growing need for Holiday Island. You talk about tourism in Eureka Springs, you know, with all the VRBOs and stuff here, I would imagine that one of the minimum requirements for a VRBO is to be able to stream TV and movies and stuff. So, without, you know, the screen freezing every 5 minutes.
That's one of the top things that people require when they book at Airbnb or VRBO, is Wi-Fi access. I want mountain and lake, but I want Wi-Fi.
1,000 miles and pay $1,000 a month or a week to sit in the basement and watch TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, don't do that.
I wanna see your song and dance.
Yeah, oh, yeah, now, I will leave these with you, I've got plenty more. So holler if you need more, and thank you all
We're
very
not
much.
gonna do the whole county.
I've got 2 boxes in my car.
Uh,
I've got to drop them off at libraries.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's a big dumpster down there.
All right, well, I'm gonna be out the rest of the week, but I think maybe next week we need to have a little workshop to figure out and maybe invite, some representatives from the churches and communities and try to get a core team working on this
Plan
as
together.
early as possible in
Plan
July.
together.
I didn't understand. You said you can't have names, you can just have towns.
Was it?
She doesn't want names or
yeah.
addresses.
Yeah, so just to differentiate, I just put Colony Alley versus Eureka Springs, Burgle. Okay.
Yeah, you could just. put
But,
HI
to me, it would be interesting data, being an old engineer, I love data. And, you can do a lot of good things with data. And, it would be nice for us to know where our dead zones are. Because if this whole thing fails, that we don't end up getting a plug nickel out of all of this grant money and everything else, I'd still like to be able to go to Cox and say, look, you either provide us good service at a reasonable price, or we're gonna go shopping. The city is gonna go shopping.
We can put a franchise in there.
Yeah.
What if we do the survey, like you're saying, get the organizations and churches together to do the surveys for us? But we have them put their address, not their name, but an address
Yeah, just
on
an
the
address.
card.
We don't care who.
And then we transfer it to a spreadsheet before, then we black out the address to give it to Sandy and hand them the cards.
I mean, we can compile our own database. for the
Exactly, we
cards.
can have our own database
Yeah.
before we hand off the data.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try to set something up as soon as possible to get a little workshop going. All right, next, review the legislative audit report. Wes, did you bring that with you?
No, I didn't.
I don't think
I have it there.
I think everybody read it.
Okay.
The
Okay.
reason we're doing this, there's nothing earth-shattering or concerning in the report, but it is a legal requirement that once the audit is done and turned over to the legislature, that I present it or we present it to the council, and it gets recorded in the minutes that we reviewed the audit.
And I'll point out, we talk about an audit and the.
Or shared bike.
Actually, in their report, they do not call it an audit. They're in this type of work, there are 3 levels or types of reports and types of work that are done. A compilation is where you really do no verification of much of anything. You just look at things and see if they look reasonable. Then there is a review where you do some procedures, and then there is the audit and they did not do an audit, okay? They call it, in their report, they say, I saw it in here, that they did a limited review. We performed certain limited procedures with respect to the cash basis, financial information, and compliance with certain state laws, and accepted accounting practices. And bottom line, in their report, they had, I think, basically 2 findings. One, they said that we did not have a fixed asset policy. We did have a record of fixed assets that I had prepared, but I didn't, and I don't have serial numbers for everything and some of that information. But at the time they did this work, we didn't have a fixed asset policy. We now do, and we defined a fixed asset as something costing more than $5,000. We have no such fixed asset. Okay.
Took care of that.
And then they reported, on my side, that the, pre-numbered receipts were not issued for all funds received. The funds, the receipts that we were not doing receipts for were for the distributions done electronically into our bank account from the state of Arkansas, and also from property tax receipts paid by check from the county. I felt, normally for proper internal control, you issue receipts to people that are standing there by you, and you give them a copy of the receipt. They get one copy, and in our case, we have 2 other copies. We have 3 copies of the receipts. Well, if there's nobody standing there to hand a receipt to, what's the purpose of preparing a receipt for money transmitted electronically from the state of Arkansas? Well, they agreed. I said, well, so if we write out a receipt, what do we do with it? With that client copy? Well, stick it in a folder or throw it away or whatever, because you've got nothing to do with it. And I said, well, what's the purpose of it? Well, it ended up, assists them in a procedure that they want to do. They want to go through the receipt book, add up the receipts, and see if it agrees with what we've reported in our financial statements.
It's a two-way match system where
Yeah,
the,
and normally, we used to audit cities and counties, and basically, like for receipts from the state or receipts from another government agency, we confirmed those with the other agency, got a list of them and compared them back. And I said, do you do that? And they said, yes, we do. So anyway, that was their report. We didn't have a fixed asset policy, and we didn't issue pre-numbered receipts for all of the monies received.
didn't they have one more suggestion? Because we had 2 different checking systems and the checks were numbered. Like we had
At that time.
the capability of having 2 checks with the same number on it.
Well, right, and there were checks that were not, all checks were not in consecutive order, because in our accounting system, it was using a separate numbering system for the general checks and for payroll. And so there could be, checks, like Dan said, checks with the same numbers or not in consecutive order. Well, so when he pointed that out, he said, well, check with your accounting software people. And yes, all they had to do was to check a box or whatever in that software so that payroll and general checks are all consecutive now.
The only question they talked about are unauthorized withdrawal. What in the heck was it?
Right, that, yes, and they didn't, I guess, they've got that in there. And that was nothing no fault on our part, that was that, check that was to the
Stolen.
software people that was stolen out of the US mail
Oh.
and altered and cashed. And we found it, 2 days after the end of the month, when we figured out that the computer people hadn't gotten the payment, and the bank gave us, refunded the loss the day that it was reported to them.
That's why I gave up auditing.
Okay,
Any questions?
any other questions on the,
Sounds
on
like
the?
Make a
you
motion, we
did very good.
make a motion to approve the
So I
audit.
was,
We don't
think
we don't have to approve it, we just have to record in the minutes that we went over it.
Is this something we should post on the website?
Probably get more questions if you got answers.
you're right.
You definitely wanna clarify that unauthorized withdrawal as being a stolen check, That's a not very complimentary way of saying that we gotta.
Yeah, that was not very well explained.
Well, maybe it should be accompanied by, just a little written statement from the city saying, what was done about it, or what, the
Yeah.
resolution of each finding.
I went back through, because I wondered what that unauthorized thing was too, I went back through your financial statements and saw that you had checked on all of them before, because it was stolen. So I found that in our reports.
One thing, and this is getting to be a common problem, is theft of checks out of the mail.
And I never put them in the box.
One way of reducing that potential loss is if we paid more things electronically, which I think we can do. It would take,
We were gonna,
been a
look
while
into that,
since I
weren't we?
talked to them about that, but did I say we needed an ordinance or something to authorize, doing that?
I don't know, but, I mean, you could always,
Because there's like the computer people, the attorney,
software will do it.
the attorney, right on the attorney bills when we get them, there's a place I could just go in and check, pay it electronically. There's a link right in there.
we'd have to understand that, there's an approval process that's in the, in the Arkansas code that says that, certain things have to be approved before they can be paid. So the automatic, we'd have to have a mechanism for pre-approving the things that are gonna be automatically paid. So.
And are you thinking paying via the credit card or paying via debit?
We could.
Checking?
We had one where the payment didn't get to them for 10 days or something like that, and we had a $40 late fee, which they did refund.
We have several things already set up to automatically pay.
Well, some have to be, that's like what,
Yeah,
Cox?
some of them require it.
Cox has to be paid electronically, doesn't it?
Well, I think we're doing UMA that way, and I think we're doing Cox
Well,
that
right.
way.
Maybe not Cox. Yeah, your UMA and the
The
website.
website or the,
Emails.
Now, the more we can do electronically, the better. We just need to make sure that we have a policy so that cover it, so that the appropriate approvals happen.
yeah.
And
Because
like,
the payment may be automatic, but the approval to make the payment by law can't be automatic.
and someone has to review then
You do.
those payments.
You need to
An
have
independent person.
an accounting of the review, so to speak. That you
Well, like
signed
now-
off on it or checked off
I open Dan's credit card statement, he opens mine, and we have to look at them to, you know, and then have the receipts to match up with those statements.
Which has been a problem twice now when we order stuff online and don't get a receipt printed out. And then the bill comes in, we have a credit card bill, but we don't have the receipt, you know, or the invoice, to back it up. So, we gotta get better control of that. Of course, I'm preaching to myself here. Damn it, get better control of that. Okay, I will. All right, moving on. Ordinance 2023-014, an ordinance repealing and replacing planning and zoning regulations for the city of Holiday Island in its entirety in order to clarify zoning regulations for other purposes and declaring an emergency. Then I'm gonna give you one of these fat copies back and make you read it since you.
Okay,
Oh, you don't.
I've got it here. Will I read?
Yes, go ahead. and read it.
Ordinance 23.
Well,
Yeah.
wait.
We have
Never
a
mind.
motion.
I have to make a motion. Do I
Make
have
a motion to approve resolution
ordinance
2023-014.
2023-014?
Ken was talking, making a motion while you were reading.
I'm gonna ask again, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2023-014?
I thought I did that.
You did.
Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-014.
Ken made a motion to approve, do I have a second?
Second.
Jerry seconded it, now we can read the ordinance.
Ordinance 2023-14, an ordinance repealing and replacing the planning and zoning regulations for the city of Holiday Island in its entirety in order to clarify zoning regulations for other purposes and declaring an emergency. Whereas pursuant to ACA 1456-416, the Holiday Island City Planning Commission has determined it necessary to develop zoning regulations for the entire planning area of Holiday Island to provide districts of compatible uses, for unified development, for the elimination of nonconformance, and for other matters of general welfare of the city. And whereas pursuant to ACA 1456-422, public notice was given by the Holiday Island City Planning Commission of its intent to amend the planning and zoning regulations, and advised that copies of the documents were available on the city website for public review and examination. And whereas after due notice of, as required by law, the HICPC held a public hearing for all persons desiring to be heard regarding certain amended and new planning and zoning regulations. And whereas after thorough consideration and comments and views expressed by all interested parties, said HICPC by resolution HICPC R23-4 on June 13, 2023, has certified, adopted, and recommended that said amendments to the planning and zoning regulations should be considered for adoption by the City Council of Holiday Island. And whereas all comments, views, suggestions, and recommendations have been considered and addressed by the City Council, and whereas the City Council of Holiday Island now finds in the best interest of the citizens of Holiday Island and desires to adopt said amendments to the planning and zoning regulations in its entirety by ordinance to better provide for the clarification of terms and uses of zoning regulations. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Holiday Island, Arkansas, Section 1, that the planning and zoning regulations, Section 2.02, definitions and terms and uses be amended to read as noted in attachment A of this ordinance. Section 2, that the planning and zoning regulations, Section 6.01, zoning districts established, is amended to read as noted in attachment B of this ordinance. Section 3, the planning and zoning regulations, Section 7.50, planned unit development, the PUD, is amended to read as noted in attachment C of this ordinance. Section 4 of the planning and zoning regulations, Section 40, development and subdivision regulations, is amended to read as noted in attachment D of this ordinance. Section 5, the planning and zoning regulations for the city of Holiday Island are hereby repealed and replaced in its entirety and as attached hereto is attachment E of this ordinance. Section 6, that all resolutions, ordinances, and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, to the extent of such conflict, are hereby repealed. Section 7, that in the event that any section, paragraph, subdivision clause, phrase, definition, fee, fine, or other provisions or portion of this ordinance or the planning and zoning regulations shall be adjudged invalid or unconstitutional, the same shall not affect the validity of this ordinance as a whole, or any part or provision, other than the part so decided to be invalid or unconstitutional, and the remaining provisions of this ordinance shall be construed as if such invalid, unenforceable, or unconstitutional provisions have never been contained herein. Section 8, that the city recorder treasurer shall maintain 2 signed copies of the ordinance kept on file in the office of the city recorder treasurer in the city office, 110 Woodsdale Drive, Holiday Island, Arkansas, and a link to the digital image for public inspection on the city website, www.cityofholidayisland.com. Section 9, the emergency clause. The city council hereby defines and determines that due to the urgent and immediate need to provide for orderly growth and development and to ensure consistency with enacted regulations, these amendments should be made effective immediately. As such, an emergency is hereby declared to exist. The general welfare of the citizens of Holiday Island shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and approval. Approved this date. Then there, all the attachments are here. It's a 115-page document.
Anybody want to read it?
We've all read it.
Yep, we've all been through this many times in our workshops and our meetings, so is there any discussion on the amendment?
Just one quick thing, you know, we put in section 8 that it's 110 Woodsdale. We were gonna add a word currently, since we know what we.
Well, I thought about that while it was being read too. I think if and when we move, I think we'll just have, maybe we'll have a resolution or something that says that any prior ordinance that says Woodsdale Drive now means this.
That's the appropriate way to handle it.
Yes. All right, any other discussion? And we'll move to the roll call vote.
Okay, Councilmember Dumas,
Aye.
Councilmember Elwood,
I'm sorry, aye. Lynn's got me,
Councilmember Graves,
Aye.
Councilmember Kuhn,
Aye.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Pittman.
Aye.
All in favor, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, the ordinance passes, and since there is an emergency clause, I'll entertain a motion to approve the emergency clause.
I move to approve the emergency clause.
I'll second it.
Linda made a motion to approve the emergency clause. Pat seconded it. Any discussion? Roll call
Councilmember Dumas,
Don't do that.
Councilmember Elwood,
Aye.
Councilmember Graves,
Aye.
Councilmember Kuhn,
Aye.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Pittman.
Aye.
All in favor, Mr. Mayor?
vote. All right, the emergency clause is approved and the ordinance is in effect. Next on the agenda is resolution 2023-005, authorizing the lease agreement for 5 Forest Park Avenue, units F and G, and a budget of $25,000 for leasehold improvements, furnishings, and moving expense. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move that we approve resolution 2023-05 with a title that says a budget of $30,000 on the document that I have online.
Oops, I guess I got changed my mind.
Your agenda is different, right?
Yeah, 30,000.
Yes, sir.
Is it 25 or 30?
30. The way the resolution was written for 30, the agenda is wrong. All right, we have a motion to approve resolution 2023-005 as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jerry seconded it. I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Resolution number 2023-005, a resolution for the city of Holiday Island authorizing the lease of 5 Forest Park Avenue, units F and G, and authorizing a budget of $30,000 for leasehold improvements, furnishings, and relocation expense. Whereas the city of Holiday Island has been leasing 1 room from the Holiday Island Suburban Improvement District, and whereas due to the growth in city activities, a single room is no longer suitable for conducting city business, and whereas space has been offered to the city at a rate that is within the city budget, and whereas the space being offered is adjacent to the sheriff department substation space that the city already leases, and whereas the space has a vault that provides for fireproof record storage not available at the current location. Now be it resolved by the city council of Holiday Island, Arkansas, that the mayor be authorized to sign the attached lease agreement. Two, a budget not to exceed $30,000 be approved for leasehold improvements, furnishings, and the cost to relocate the city furnishings and records. Passed and approved by the city council of Holiday Island, Arkansas on this date of 6/20/23. Do I have any discussion?
Are we giving you authority to sign the contract that he submitted to us?
Yes.
No.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I'm not comfortable with the contract. I'm comfortable with the rest. I mean, what are we gonna do about paragraph 11 in that? This is my biggest concern. I know you're concerned about the roof, but I'm concerned about paragraph 11, which is the indemnity agreement, which we can't do.
Okay, you want to elaborate on that? I'm
Well,
maybe not up to date on where we stand on that.
Well, I don't have, I can't find it real quickly, but it wasn't
I got
paragraph
it.
11. You got a paragraph 11 in the agreement.
Just a minute, let me get to it.
I don't think we can do either one of those things. We can't indemnify them, and we can't buy a general liability policy for them. So how are we gonna sign the lease?
Okay,
I mean, unless he's willing to waive that part, which would be wonderful. But that's, Wes, you talked to the people in our municipal league also.
Right.
You get the same impression I did. We can't provide either one of those things because the way they construe the law, I don't know necessarily that I would read that case that way, that we're not allowed as a municipality to indemnify anybody or provide for their indemnity, which if we bought a policy would be providing for their indemnity. I don't know that I agree with it, but I'm also not a lawyer and I didn't read that case. That's my concern with it. I mean, the others, I don't like the roof and the seal coat, but I could live with that. But I don't know what we do about that paragraph.
Yeah, and what they told me, as I recall, is that we are not liable to anyone else for damages. We are exempt from, damages, so they don't write those policies. I guess
Nobody does.
I figured because they said there was no need for it.
Well,
Yeah,
but we're signing a lease. Are we just gonna go under the assumption that because that's contrary to public policy, then that just voids that part of the lease, which it might. I don't know that that's not true. I don't like signing something that we know we can't do.
If we can't do it, we should strike it and initial it that it's stricken, and then the leaseholder should initial agreeing to the strike.
Yeah.
So it's not even in there.
I have a little problem with what he's asking us to take.
I can live with that. I know what you're talking, the roof and the seal coat bothers me.
Yeah, that's not our responsibility.
what paragraph are you talking about?
That's 7.
7.
Stuff inside the walls and in the
If it
interior.
said ceiling instead of roof, I would be happy.
But he said
I think we could live with that if we had to. That's just.
I don't know, the drive-through operation, why do we wanna mess with that thing?
We might use it.
For what? The seal coating the parking lot and, and roof, no.
It's separate in there, so what is it?
Lesser shelter. Oh, wait a minute, lesser shall maintain
HVAC
roof
and
wall.
plumbing and electrical.
So that, the roof's out, the wall.
Yeah, there's nothing in there about the roof, first of all.
No, it is, yeah, it is too, but it says lesser, I misread it, okay?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misread it too, then that's fine. Incidentally, I did look up average, commercial property leases, and he's not high.
Oh, no, but, I mean, why would we be responsible?
No,
for
no,
seeking-
but we had another issue, I was a little concerned when I saw that we're giving him the $1,200, if it's not worth $3,000 a month, is it ethical for us to sign a lease? But it is worth $3,000 a month, because I've checked some other
I think we need to get,
properties out.
we need to have our attorney look at the thing about insurance and
I don't think we need to have an attorney look at it, it's,
I think we need to do what they suggested, just strike it, initial it, and.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go ahead and do, is strike it, we'll initial it, Wes and I can both initial it, and then I'll get him on the phone and, tell him, you know, I guess, you know, given the fact that he is the city attorney for Pea Ridge, you know, I assumed that everything he put in there was normal and customary.
that looks like boilerplate lease, but he probably doesn't write the cities. No, if they strike
But
that.
I don't have a problem with striking that. The seal coating the parking lot, I don't know why we would have a problem with that, because
because it's not ours.
we're leasing the parking lot.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are.
We get the parking lot with the building.
And what about all the other people in that building that are in the same parking spot?
I think he says that we would be responsible for half of the parking lot.
Does their lease read the same?
Now, keep in mind that if we don't want it seal coated, I mean, he's not gonna come back and demand that we seal coat it.
That's
It
right.
would be up to us to decide that we want a nice, you know, resurfaced and restriped parking lot. So,
Okay.
and I believe we would have to confirm this, but I know that you can use,
What about snow and ice removal during the winter then? Are we gonna have to?
we'll have to do that.
That's not unusual for a tenant to do that.
We'll get you a snowplow blade for the
That can come out of street
20-year
funds.
Ford.
So do we just remove the snow in front of our office and leave it,
Leave the rest of it there.
leave the rest of it there? I question, I guess, isn't the landlord
Yeah.
normally responsible, like for the HVAC and the plumbing?
He's talking about normal
He
maintenance.
says normal, yeah, normal.
Normal maintenance, he wants us to change the filters and have the freon checked and stuff like that. If one craps out, he replaces it.
Can you go back to that
Only-
section, Lynn? Can you go back to that?
He didn't say anything about
It says normal.
snow removal.
7, the normal maintenance,
Okay.
Just as normal maintenance.
including but not limited to. So it might be if we crack a door, we're gonna have to fix the door.
Yeah, if we break a window, we got to
Yeah.
fix it.
Right.
Okay,
So,
If we get mad and slam the toilet seat and crack the bowl, we're gonna have to replace it.
yeah.
We're not gonna have any heavy duty stuff in there.
we are, the law allows, turnback money, road tax money, to be used for paving and maintaining public parking areas. I would need to confirm that this qualifies, given that we're renting it
We're a
and
public
not owning
entity.
it. But it's definitely our public parking for our city hall.
We got
So
public
I'm
comment.
guessing that if we wanted seal coated, we could use some of our road.
Mr. Mayor, can we allow public comment
Public
now?
Yes,
Can I ask you a question?
sure.
If you're leasing a parking lot, does that mean that you're liable for things that happen on the parking lot, like somebody falling and hurting themselves, or?
Well, that would still all come under municipal immunity, which is really strong in Arkansas. I've never seen a state as strong as this one. and then we're covered by the municipal.
Okay, I was thinking, if we're responsible for snow removal and somebody comes up and we haven't removed the snow from the sidewalk.
If we hire a snow removal company, they'll indemnify us, not the other way around.
Okay, thank you.
A term that I couldn't remember was statutory immunity.
So the other end of that is the hot box, right?
Mhm.
There's
And
something else in there.
there's one unit between the sheriff's substation and hot box, and that's being rehabbed right now. He's got that rented, somebody's, I think maybe an insurance agency or something is moving in there.
There you go.
So if we seal coat the entire parking lot, they'll share in the hot box, will share in the expense?
Hot box or chain.
Because I mean, it wouldn't make sense for us to just go to the.
We're only responsible for our part.
It's not the first thing we're gonna do is go up there and resurface the parking lot, so.
Well, no, but I mean, talk about striping and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, usually they do the seal coating and striping at the same time.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I've seen times, you know, it's usually on weekends, but they do something during the week, that parking lot's full.
I haven't looked at the condition of the parking lot, but
Other
seal coating is,
other than somebody digging a ditch down the middle of it, it's pretty good shape.
seal coating is done to extend the life, which we're not really interested in. We could restripe it for safety and parking reasons without resurfacing, restriping, I mean,
Because I
without
don't
seal
know
coating it.
if there are handicap spots now on that end.
I think there's a ramp up to the porch, if you will, and I think one side is marked handicap. We may have to
You
have the other
can't see
side,
it though.
we may have to have the other side remarked handicap too.
Okay.
The state law for handicap spaces has to do with how many spaces are available in a certain percentage.
In the square foot.
I'm thinking that maybe this is kind of a standard format
You-
lease that he uses.
Can I ask,
And he just printed it out and
Well, he's made some modifications already that I asked for, so, but,
question?
Yeah.
Are you planning on contracting this, getting a contractor to do all these modifications?
he's got a guy that he works with that did the whole hot box. His name is,
Probably the,
I forget his name now. Gary Brown. If I just look on my note, there's a guy from Pea Ridge, Gary Brown, did hot box. He did the hot box and he's doing that one unit right next to the sheriff's substation right now. I'm gonna meet him up there next week and he's gonna give me a estimate on what it would cost. Shane would.
I thought you were probably, I thought maybe you were gonna do that as a part-time job or something.
Shane is not requiring that we use this guy, but he's hoping we do because the guy knows the building inside and out. And has done a really good job on the other end of it.
I have a zoning concern, that we're going to sign a lease for a building and a use that's not permitted in our own regulations. Our regulations say that C1s and C2s for government services are conditional use permits. So I wonder if we are wise signing a document to lease a property that we can't use legally.
It's a pretty good bet that we can get a condition.
I think we'll get that. I think we'll get that.
I'm just bringing it up.
I'm
Yeah,
glad we got
Government
this, so we can
services,
get a
conditional use in
clarification.
C1 and C2.
And if we,
so.
if we can't, there's a 90-day clause in here too, that we can terminate the contract at
Okay.
90 days
We're
notice.
planning on voting against it.
So this would be a requirement that the property owner has to come to the city planning commission and ask for a conditional use permit. So he can lease it for the purposes of government service.
I'll talk to him about that.
Okay.
He won't have a problem with
The
that.
soonest we could do that would be in our normal calendar is August 8th. The deadline for applying for that is the second Tuesday of July.
Do our ordinances on this require a physical presence of the owner, or could they just send paperwork?
As far as applying for it,
Right.
oh, I don't know, at the public hearing, they can do the forms and they don't have to be here.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have to be present for the hearing or
Since
anything.
Okay,
lives far away,
Yeah,
might not be convenient.
no, it doesn't require that the applicant
And
be
it's sure to
present.
pass. I mean,
So
where are you saying this is not permitted?
In the chart on our,
There, C1, C2.
in our current ordinance, under commercial districts and industrial uses, district uses,
Okay, but that's commercial up there.
is the commercial section. That property is zoned C1 or 2, I'm not sure which.
Okay.
And then government services are conditional.
The sheriff's office is a government service.
Yeah, the sheriff's already there.
They're there.
Good point. And we leased it.
Shame, shame.
That was,
Well, wait a minute, when did the government service office get leased? Because this has only been effective since February of 22.
that's what I was gonna say, that
Mine
this,
After that,
Okay,
why did we make that conditional?
well, it has to do with, you wanna know what kind of government service is in there, and is there gonna be appropriate parking, and whatever conditions, we decided to be conditional.
So is the post office, is that not a government service?
Yes.
It is existing before we did it.
Again,
Oh, but it was pre-existing.
Pre-existing.
And they're not permitted.
Of course it's not permitted, right?
Throw the boogers out.
Well, can we not put, just write in a thing for, an initiative, pending, rezoning?
We could, or like Dan said, there's a 90-day escape clause, so we've
Yeah.
gotta get it settled before then.
Actually, thinking about it, isn't a government services operation more appropriate for a commercial district than a residential district, where we have it permitted?
it depends on what kind of government service, I mean, there's all kinds of,
Well, what kind would exist in a residential area?
Well, I'm thinking over in Harrison, I think the
It's
Social
only
Security
permitted in
office is in a
residential.
residential area. It may be zoned differently right where it sits. It's on the edge of town. I don't know. It's our current version. We just passed it.
I know, so I'm just saying.
We could
Just
move
to me,
it to
seems more
reconsider and
logical to have
change it.
In a commercial
very
area than a
confident.
residential area.
Anyway,
Well, my question was, why would it take 2 months for us to approve it?
If you follow the calendar,
Okay.
do it.
you have to have a public hearing.
You have to have a public
And
hearing.
you have to have 15 days notice of the public hearing, and it has to happen. You have to be able to notify the newspaper, make public notice and everything. Takes about 2 months.
and if we went back and changed the regulation, it takes 2 months.
Same time.
You gotta do another public hearing. I think we were short-sighted.
Well,
The fact that the law requires a public hearing for anytime you're doing anything with the zoning ordinances really makes it difficult. And I suppose they intentionally make it difficult
Yeah.
to change zoning ordinances.
So you can't have a government service, but you have a tattoo parlor in that area?
I don't think tattoo parlors are listed in any form or shape, so if someone wants to have one, I don't know if we even have to require a hearing because it's considered commercial, right?
It's just a.
It's a business,
It's
It's
just
a
commercial.
retail business.
yeah. It's a service. And before tattoos, it was ear piercing, Government services, buildings or facilities owned or operated by government entities and providing services for the public. typically administrative offices of government agencies.
So this place is illegal too?
It's pre-existing.
Is it?
Also pre-existing.
I don't
I
know,
think this
this
is
is
zone-
commercial.
I
zone.
think this is zone commercial, but, you know, it was here before we had the ordinance.
My guess is what we're trying to avoid is like downtown Eureka Springs, where they have the courthouse and the city hall in a building that has 0 parking.
Yeah.
So if you wanna if you get a traffic ticket, you have to go to Eureka Springs and pay $5 so that you can park to go in and pay your traffic ticket.
It was a
It's cheap.
$5 lot, not full.
It's cheaper to not pay the ticket.
So it's to force people to think about, like, you know, things like parking and impact on other businesses and residential areas. Okay, so striking paragraph 11.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion on the resolution?
Call for question.
All right. Let's move to the roll call
Councilmember Dumas,
Aye.
Councilmember Elwood,
Aye.
Councilmember Graves,
Aye.
Councilmember Kuhn,
Aye.
Councilmember Mills,
Aye.
Councilmember Pittman,
Aye.
all in favor, Mr. Mayor.
vote. Okay, the resolution passes as amended, and it'll be next week before I'll be able to get a hold of Shane Perry to go over that change. And if he won't go along with it, then we're back to square one.
Well, if he's the city attorney, I mean,
You ought to know.
he ought to know that. And
You probably just slip it over there and see.
I think this is probably more.
It just came off track.
All right, public comments, 3 minutes. Public got anything to say? It's your chance.
When do we open the zoo?
Right after.
After we build the library.
Right after we build the library, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
We'll have it behind the library.
the library is out now because the space we were gonna put it in is rented to
Well, I was
somebody
thinking
else.
we could put all the loose dogs and cats in the zoo and start with that.
There you go.
No further comments, Mr. Mayor.
The nesting.
Council member comments. Linda?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna give everyone a little bit of an update on the Arkansas Municipal League Conference. Well, it's a convention. The summer one's a convention and the winter one is called a conference. So I couldn't tell the difference. Nevertheless,
It's
there
warm.
were more people at the summer one than there were at the winter one, though. There were, I think they said about 1,000 attendees from 499 cities and towns in Arkansas. So, anyway, yeah, I was gonna say, the most information, or at least they talked a lot about the legislative initiatives that the Municipal League had been pushing with the legislature in this last legislative session that ended in April. And, because, you know, in Arkansas, they only do legislation, real legislation every other year. And on the off years that they're not doing that, they do financial budget types of things. They don't pass hardly any real laws. So, anyway, Arkansas Municipal League is extremely active trying to represent the interests of cities and towns with the legislature and trying to communicate what the problems are that cities face, that they need laws changed about, any, you know, that stops the progress that cities are trying to make and make it easier for cities to operate in the state. And they do an excellent job. And it was really interesting. One of the other things they pointed out was that they had, this may take more than a minute. So they got over 4,000 legal inquiries to their legal team, the Arkansas Municipal League Legal Counsel team. in a year. In this past year, they had over 4,000 legal inquiries made to them that they had to research and respond to. Isn't that just amazing? Anyway, they have extremely good legal counsel there, and we lost a really good one, Lanny. You know, he went on
Yeah, I
to
heard you read.
greener
Yeah.
pastures somewhere. But he was really good.
You could always get something.
So anyway, some of the things that they are working on, or actually in the last legislative session, they had a short-term rental bill that was gonna prevent cities from doing very much of anything with short-term rentals. And they were able to get that bill to fail in the legislature, which took them, because the legislature typically is very pro-property owner rights in the state of Arkansas. And so a lot of the representatives and senators didn't like any infringement upon the property owner's rights. And, you know, it's sort of, you have to let them do whatever they want to do, regardless of how it looks to the neighbors, or how it sounds to the neighbors, or how it affects the neighbors. But, and I think that probably is because Arkansas is a rural state, and people generally lived on farms far away from each other. But when they're, you know, 10 feet away from each other, I think it's a different situation you have to consider there. But, because you're having your rights is going to impinge upon my rights at some point. So anyway, but they are going to put forward another short-term rental bill next session. But that's like 2025.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a while, but they work on it all through the time. So, and try to get buy-in from the.
Did they mention House Bill 1610?
Is that the publication one?
No, that's the one allowing two officials to meet and not constitute.
Actually, they didn't talk a lot about that. No, they didn't mention it at this meeting. They did mention the one about online publications that cities have to do instead of forcing us to use newspapers. And they're still, it failed this past legislature, but they're gonna continue to try to push it, at least as an an alternative, and they're gonna try to have like a statewide site that cities could post on so everybody knows about it. So it's not, you don't have to have your own website, in other words, to post it. So that's a thought they had, that they might get more buy-in for something like that.
It's interesting that, you know, just a side note on that, the Democrat Gazette has reformatted their newspaper to where all the legal notices come at the end now, so that you don't have to scroll past page after page after page of legal notice. So they themselves admit that it's more of a nuisance for people than anything else to have it in tiny little print in the back end of the newspaper. So,
but for so many newspapers, and especially small town ones, I think that was bread and butter for them. You know, they got money to survive, money so they
But
could.
if they do what they're talking about, that's what Oklahoma did when newspapers stopped printing, is they all did, posted online, and then the State Press Association, who didn't fight it, they gathered them all up and posted them on the Press Association website. Newspapers kept their revenue, people could find the legal notices.
But yet they had the cities and towns over a barrel having to conform to that. And when they could just as well have offered their own public website to the residents of their cities, right? So anyway, moving on, let's see, what else did they have? There's also gonna be something about building permit time limits that they're gonna put in the next session too. I'm not real sure what that was about, maybe, but, anyway, the other, one of the big topics they were talking about was the broadband thing, which we, discussed here today. And they were explaining how, they basically gave Sandy's talk at the convention about how they had switched, the old guy that was in there, ran around the thing, they didn't think he had done it right, and so they replaced him with a new fellow, and they think he's gonna do a good job for them.
So did you get their $2 million back?
Yeah, 2.5 on that, yeah. So, and then also, the other thing that they really were stressing in this session, there were at least 2 sessions on this, and this was cybersecurity for IT systems that cities and towns have. And so, they're, I forewarned you about that, and they're gonna have to, they're gonna start auditing IT operations of every city and town, just like they audit financial stuff, because it's become such a prominent problem across governmental entities, with ransomware attacks and stealing credentials and all kinds of, viruses and stuff like that getting into systems, costing cities and towns money. And the legislature passed an act that is to set up a fund to pay, it's sort of an insurance fund that will take care of paying for any attacks, like if you get a ransomware attack and you have to pay money, the insurance fund that they're setting up will reimburse you, but only if you have implemented certain policies and procedures and have controls set up in your own IT operations where they feel you are doing the best job you could possibly do. And depending upon how good a job they think you're doing, they rate you with an assessment. That's how much you can expect to get money to reimburse you. It's tied to the amount of money that you would be reimbursed. From on a sliding scale from nothing to maybe up to $100,000. So we're going to have to get.
You haven't convinced me that that's a good plan. It sounds like they have a plan to take your money, and you're still kind of on your own. But anyway, we'll see what they come up with.
Oh, they're not gonna take our money. The ransomware would take our money, or the money we have to pay out to repair our systems to IT providers or whoever to avoid something. But, the insurance fund is not gonna take money from us.
Where's that money gonna come from?
Probably out of the turnback funds that we get or something, but,
So we're gonna pay.
well, it could be, but they didn't say it in so many words. I don't know. The state has deep pockets, apparently. So, and they hope that by getting everybody running correctly or running in a better way, they will avoid having any incidents. So one of the things we're gonna have to do is, I made a list here. We're gonna have to do the assessment when they offer it and some awareness training. We're gonna have to implement a password management system. We're gonna have to have process and procedures, controls set up according to the best practices they're gonna educate us about. They're really stressing that everybody needs to have a managed service provider. And we already have that, so we're ahead of the game on a lot of cities with that. But, and interestingly, when we picked our managed service provider, there was only one of them in the state that the municipal league vetted. They have now vetted over 20 firms that provide managed services to all over the state. And many of them were represented at the convention. They had a table in the exhibitor lounge, and it was amazing. They're all pretty impressive, and most of them have an office in the Northwest Arkansas corridor. So, you know, if we, you know, should need to change providers at any time, I think we'll have a good selection to choose from. It certainly relieved me that there are a lot more competition out there that could serve us. I went to every one of the tables and I said, okay, you know, do you have any offices in Northwest Arkansas? Or are you just in Little Rock? Because they're all in Little Rock.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of them had offices in Jonesboro, some of them have offices, you know, in the other major, there aren't too many major towns in Arkansas. So, but I think Northwest Arkansas has become the other major place besides Little Rock in Arkansas. So they're getting the competition there. And, and Municipal League is starting a whole bunch of new initiatives itself this coming year. They talked about, now these were already ongoing things. They have and I don't know if you knew about the municipal vehicle program. It's a way
Yeah,
to
I'm
acquire vehicles
aware of it,
through
yeah.
the Municipal League. There's a municipal workers' comp program. They talked a lot about that. There was a session on that. A municipal property program. I think that's if you own your city hall. And then, of course, the legal program we already talked about. They're also going to be revamping the Municipal League website, which I think is not the greatest to find stuff, but it's okay right now. But they're going to be revamping the whole website. They're going to be adding a section of that website devoted to the City and Town magazine. That the magazine is going to go to quarterly instead of monthly. I think it's monthly. It's going to go to quarterly, and they're going to have additional City and Town information like they put in the magazine on the website. And then they're also going to revamp all of their training. You know, how you can take these training seminars, you know, you find out you can take Finance 101, Finance 201, and learn about how to do grants and all these kinds of things. Anyway, everything that they give training on now, they're going to revamp that whole way they deliver training to us. And it looks like it's going to be really neat with what they're going to do. So I was really impressed. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay. Lynn, I know you want to make a comment?
Yeah, because we passed the ordinance tonight to update our planning and zoning regulations about, it includes lot splitting and moving property lines. The concern that we had is that Carroll County has been accepting plats without our knowledge. We're discovering it when we look at Data Scout. So I prepared to document a letter that we might send to the officials at Carroll County to inform them that there's a law in place that says that they can't do that without our permission, without the planning commission. So I think I distributed that to each one for your review, and I'm encouraging the mayor and the secretary to sign it so that it gets sent in a timely manner. I dated it for tomorrow, so to let them know. But what I didn't know is maybe our attorney should look at it first. I mean, in the document, I copied, the first attachment is our ordinance we just passed. And then I cited the extracts from Arkansas's code, and I highlighted that brings attention to their name, if you will. And then I brought in our relevant text from our ordinance, so they don't have to look it up. That shows that we are doing these things and it requires our permission before they file, before it's recorded. And I think most importantly is this piece here, the certificate, this document, this text that would be on the plot plans with your signatures showing that we've approved it.
I didn't have any problem with the letter. I'm leaving town bright and early tomorrow morning.
Okay, well, the date can be changed.
Huh?
The date can be changed.
Yeah, I'll look at it when I get back.
Okay,
I'll be back next week.
all right. Should I just, do you think you have it, or should I just email it again just to be sure?
I got it.
Okay. And it's on my computer if you don't find it, so. I thought it was important that the city council sees that we're gonna have this communication with those officials.
Can I make one quick comment?
Mhm.
I saw, on Nextdoor, I guess it was, or Facebook, that we just, had offered, a couple printers, I guess. And then one of our critics made the comment that, you know, I bet they're buying new computers and giving these away. I'm just wondering, I mean, that's pretty common practice to get rid of stuff like that. If we shouldn't, have a little bit more explanation of why we're getting rid of it. I mean, were those the ones that somebody donated or
We got both of them, we got when we inherited from
inherited them?
we inherited them from the old planning commission. And we already had one big printer donated to us. And, we had already bought a small printer and the check printer. So we were just kind of drowning in printers. And, you know, those old printers, I mean, they still worked yet, but they're old enough that nobody had they didn't have any service contracts on them or anything. So, you know, if they broke down, then, you know, it probably cost you more than what it's worth to get it fixed. So we were just trying to get rid of
I think there's nothing wrong with what we did. It's just that
it. It was just,
in
The planning
today's
commission
climate, you
couldn't
can't
be
do
hooked
stuff
to
like
the
that
network
because somebody's.
anyway.
Huh?
The planning commission couldn't be hooked to the network.
and maybe, I don't know, I never really looked that hard to,
It didn't have a connection, it didn't have an Ethernet connection.
yeah.
Anyway.
So,
Move to adjourn.
yeah, we got, you know, a couple of comments, but it wasn't bad. There was only one really negative comment. And then Zamudio suggested we hang on to them, but for what reason? You know,
I'll second it.
Well, when they come to the city council and complain about it, then we'll.
Yeah.
When I get a chance, I'll second it.
I think you heard my motion.
You have a motion?
Yeah, to adjourn.
Oh,
We still have some announcements.
we didn't talk about scheduling yet. I'm gonna try to get a workshop scheduled to get some activity going on this broadband survey. And our next regular meeting is at the regular time. Any announcements? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ken made a motion to adjourn. Jerry seconded it. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.